Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101, the sped up version of a live broadcast. Right here I'm working on a quarter-page piece of gold foil and applying a pretty thick slathering of the Brilliance water-based pigment ink here, okay? It has to be the Brilliance ink for this type of effect that I'm going after. I call it kind of like my pseudo soot card. We're using a liquid ink here, but there used to be this little technique where you soot up a piece of glossy cardstock and stamp into it, giving you this reverse impression with a clean stamp, and that's what we're going to be doing here with the Spruce Large, okay? And I'm going to be doing this in a mirrored type of reflective mirror card format. So I'm going for something fairly bold here. The gold is darker than a chrome, just by the very nature of the hue of gold in comparison to silver. So I'm using a fairly bold image and solid one in this Spruce Large, okay? Alright, so every time you make a reverse impression like that, what you're doing is you are stamping into a wet ink and you're lifting that reverse impression right off the surface, and that's what the Brilliance ink allows you to do, okay? You might be able to do it with another type of pigment ink, like an oil-based one, but you'll have to emboss it or do something like that because other types of pigment inks just will never dry on this non-porous surface. Okay, so speaking of that, what we're doing here is we're heat setting all of that Brilliance black ink. And one of the things I kind of forgot about was when you apply heat to the gold foil, you get this kind of rainbowy type of look if you keep the heat on there for too long. Okay, so on top of this, I'm not going for a reverse impression, but what I'm doing is I'm stamping out the gold Brilliance ink right over the top of it. I feel it's going to give us a much brighter, more three-dimensional look by having the imagery in front of those reverse image spruce trees lighter, brighter, and I don't know, just a little bit more full in terms of the impression, okay? When you do an ink lifting process, inevitably what you get is kind of a not a absolutely clean version of it. That's why it has that little kind of antiqued look in the background there with those spruce trees. You get some of the black still showing. Okay, getting my bearings here, taking a look and seeing what that is going to look like. You can see all my little smudgy fingerprints around the perimeter where I've touched the dry Brilliance ink. Okay, so that Brilliance ink will just wipe right off this surface. Any ink, practically will, except for StazOn, okay? But it's also the thing that allows you to go and do these reverse impression types of things. Splatter painted white on there to give it some extra texture. I don't get a really smooth application of things, so putting on that texture kind of, I don't know, it makes it, I don't know, a little bit more natural looking. Okay, testing this out with both the gold and silver. And I think I like that look at the gold a lot more. It just gives it that really nice warm look to it. And look at that kind of rainbowy look in the heat set upper area. Okay, this is the first time I think I've used a StazOn black before. If I've used that StazOn before, I don't know if I don't remember. So I didn't know how long to hold this down, and kind of just the characteristic of it. Stamping on foil is kind of a strange type of thing too, so if you're going in with kind of a brand new ink, and it's a brand new ink for me. I typically didn't want to use StazOn because I didn't really feel like using a StazOn solvent style of cleaner. As I found out later, it wiped right off the 100% rubber, red rubber of Stampscape stamps with no problem, so I didn't need to worry about that, I guess. But yeah, I usually don't clean off my stamps very well, but there you have it, with the foreground and background there in the mirror card formatting. Isn't that really fun? And like I said, that heat setting of the ink really give those background spruce trees a really nice kind of rainbow holographic color to it. Okay, 4¼ by 5½, quarter page card here, glossy cardstock and dye-based inks. I'm going for a super deep kind of crimson red Aurora Borealis type of I don't know, configuration in the background. And I wasn't quite sure if I could get it or not. I haven't tried to achieve such a deep, rich red before in a scene, but I saw an inspiration. I think it was a video where it was this really deep red, kind of curtainy type of, like I said, Northern Lights type of scenario in the sky. But then it had this really bright yellow horizon. Okay, so that's what I was thinking here. I wasn't quite sure how to get it. I knew what to do to try to achieve it, but I just wasn't sure if I could get it or not. And I don't know, I wasn't even sure, I don't know, I would say 3/4 of the way through this background application process right here. So I'm just working from kind of a light tone into the darker tones. Normally I would go for a little bit of an orange in here, but I wanted to avoid using too much of the orange because it would really kind of warm up that more crimsony red type of situation, and dye-based inks are always transparent, so if I put an orange underneath that red, it would really warm it up, which normally I want, but again, I was trying to mimic this visual that I saw. So here we go. So I'm adding a lot of Marvy inks right here. You can mix and match, just mix and match whatever ink brands you have. If you do throw in 1 or 2 Marvy inks, though, Marvy inks tend to be some of the brightest of inks out there. They also have kind of the thinner viscosity of ink. A lot of inks are a lot thicker, so sometimes if you lay down a lot of thick inks on top of one another, it's really hard to apply kind of your midtones and darker tones if you're working through this value scale going from light to dark. You might have to wait for some of these other brands of inks to dry a little bit or to set up. Don't let it dry too much though. You still want to go in with kind of a moist application method, kind of wet into slightly moist. Okay, and that allows you to blend your inks much better, but you just don't want it so moist that when you try to apply a tone, you're kind of removing ink off of the surface just because it is so super saturated. Okay, so we're right up to this violet right here. I'm kind of putting in these swipe, motions in here, but I'm also kind of tapping because it is getting fairly saturated on the surface. So what I do is I usually tap some ink like that, and you can see it got much darker, but then I'm putting the streaks back into it. And I don't know, I think at some point in time I just allow this to set up a little bit more, or by the time I go into the dark brown and black, it all starts to come together slightly more. And I'll show you what I do on this piece to really get what I'm going after. And I didn't anticipate it. It was something that, I don't know, I either forgot about or didn't think of it all, but I tried something and it worked out pretty good. Okay, so see that? I'm just trying to get that violet darker and darker because again this is supposed to be a night sky. Okay, and one of the things that occurred to me while I was working on this was it started looking more like a kind of it would be like a forest fire background, but that wasn't what I was going for here. So I don't know, so I just kept working it and working it. Okay, I think this is the dark brown. That looks black to me, but I think it's the dark brown. The dark brown pad looks pretty dark. Alright, so see that? You just have to keep tapping sometimes to build up your ink. What you do when you're tapping is you're building up these little, I don't know, kind of microscopic little beads of ink on the surface, but then when you're wiping into a wet surface, you're really removing some of that ink. So you do a little bit of both because you do want that kind of wiped look to it in order to create that kind of curtainy look. All right, so as I was working this, it occurred to me again that I need to get a little bit more night sky and less kind of forest fiery type of thing. And it's still looking a little bit forest fire to me, so I try to go a little bit darker and darker. Okay, now here is the black, and you can really see where that black is being very effective in terms of creating that night sky or that darker hue that would, symbolize a night sky as opposed to a forest fire. I mean, it could be a forest fire at night too, but we're not going for that. So I was showing people in the live stream how to add those streaks into the scene. All right. Still a little bit harsh in some areas and a little bit pinkish on that horizon. I wasn't really satisfied with that. So just know that when you're going into some of these types of kind of extreme scenarios in terms of color applications, it doesn't always look like you're going to get something immediately. You have to really work the process and just keep layering your inks over one another. One of the biggest things I ever hear is, when people are doing this, okay, this is what I'm doing right here. I'm going back to red and I'm streaking into the black, and it was like, oh, that's what I needed to do there. I don't know if I've done that so much before. I've kind of done a little bit of that, but on this one it really, really paid off for me. Adding the red back into it. I didn't think it would remove as much of that black as it ended up doing, so I'm getting that really good kind of tapered look too by going into that black. All right, so a little bit more kind of curtainy looking, and again, that's kind of really to something that those Aurora Borealis curtains really tend to look like, this hanging kind of, curtainy type of kind of vertical, I don't know, kind of almost spires of light like that. Okay, so that bottom portion was still bothering me. It didn't look like it, really blended in very well, so I'm going in here with the walnut stain distressing just to kind of give that little bottom portion of yellow a little bit more of an aged look. And then, I mean, it's not doing anything huge up top either, that walnut stain, but I think it is giving it a little bit more of a kind of an earthy look to it. Okay. And then it occurred to me too when I was doing this, I'm going to be putting the Lakeside Cove down there anyway over the top of that yellow, so that's not really going to be too big of a deal. Alright, so I keep working it, and adding that down. Okay, now this one I stamped it in StazOn. I could have done it in the dye based ink too on this glossy cardstock, but I figured, let's just stick with one type of ink here. Now see the StazOn, I haven't used it before, so it's almost like I kept that StazOn, or I kept the stamp touching the page for almost too long. I need to raise it up, because that StazOn almost, it absorbs and it starts drying almost instantly. I almost kind of tore the paper coming up because that StazOn really stuck to the surface there by holding it down for too long. Okay, so that was the top portion of the Lakeside Cove. I'm stamping the bottom portion here. Now on this one, it didn't apply fast enough, and I was thinking, why did that do that right there? I don't know why. So I did go and I re-inked this StazOn pad after I did this kind of horizon application of Lakeside Cove here. And I tried to go for it again here. I wasn't kind of matching it up perfectly. You don't have to match it up perfectly when it comes to these mirror cards. And that's what you get right there. See, there's the top portion and the bottom portion right there. No need for using a stamp position or anything like that. It'll merge together just fine. That's the way I've designed these stamps, and that's the way they work. Okay, so see that right there? I give it kind of a quick impression right there with a pretty wet StazOn pad, and I'm getting really good impressions that way. I need to work on that. Like I said, I haven't used that StazOn before, so it's an ink that's probably drying, I don't know, 10 times faster than, the dye-based inks would, or the Brilliance ink that I typically would use on that foil surface. Okay, what I want to do right here is I'm going to kind of darken my horizon a little bit. And I tend to like that on mirror cards. I tend to darken that horizon a little bit, and then that creates a darker transition into that foil mirrored area. Okay, so it kind of creates this. Yeah, see that? It gives it a little bit more mass and volume by in this case, darkening the bottom of those rocks right in there. So I do it a little bit more here. And that also creates a separation between kind of the top surface and reflected area. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good in terms of our Aurora Borealis. But what's really going to make it look like a nighttime sky are some, in this case, splattered stars, splatter painted stars, and this is doing it with the Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White, which is an opaque white watercolor paint. You can add those in with something like a white gel pen or white paint pen if you don't have the Dr. Martens, but if you like that look, I'd really recommend getting some of that Dr. Martens. It really goes a long way, and it gives you a really fantastic textural application. Okay, so just checking and seeing what this looks like with the stars and with that glow, and seeing if I need to do anything else. So kind of always, it's like a chef, you want to kind of always look at arm's distance at what you're creating, and you also want to do that periodically as you're working on it. In this case with the mirror, you know, since that's kind of a really integral part of the overall look, you want to take a look and see what that reflection is looking like throughout the process to see if you need to make any adjustments to that top portion. You know, for example, making something darker here or there, making something lighter, maybe adding more stars or something like that. But there you have it. There's that format right there, quarter page formatting. But look at that glow down at the base there in the gold foil down there. And it just gave it a really warm look to it down there, as opposed to having it on the chrome. I like the chrome for a lot of things too. It mirrors something much more distinctly, but that warm glow of the gold foil, it's reflective enough for, you know, for sure. And then it also gives you that nice warm glow for certain types of color schemes. I don't think I would use the gold for like a blue colored scheme, but who knows, you know. It was really fun. And I don't know, it kind of gives me another use for that gold foil. This gold foil comes in a 60 pack, so you get a lot of foil for your money. And I'm talking about 60 full-size sheets, not the quarter page like this. So, you know, in theory, you can do, what is that, 240 of these. And at the time I bought this gold foil, for 60 of them was about $17. It's probably gone up in price, but I don't think it's gone up too much more than that. So anyways, that was the silver, and that's the gold right there. I just gave a little, you know, look at it for the viewers of the live stream. And there's the gold. So this one's kind of gold on gold like that. Gold upper portion and gold lower portion. For this, I think, a really kind of a dynamic mirror card convention. Really easy to do and very dynamic. And I think for a recipient of the card, it makes for something really fun to kind of open up. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.